What do you get when you mix one mad scientist, one invisibility serum, and the most groundbreaking special effects the world had ever seen? You get The Invisible Man, of course, a movie that didn't just shock audiences in 1933, it rewrote what was possible in film. Today, we are going to peel back the bandages on The Invisible Man. I'm going to tell you all the secrets behind its state-of-the-art special effects and tell you which ones still hold up today. I'm Antonia Carlotta, and this is Universally Me, the channel for all things Universal and classic horror. My family started Universal Studios, and they made the Universal monsters, including The Invisible Man. For a long time, Universal was the small fish in the big studio pond, but in the 1930s, they struck gold with their Universal monsters. Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy all came out in quick succession, 1931, 31, 32, and now in 1933, it was finally time for The Invisible Man. Pre-production on The Invisible Man was anything but smooth. That's going to be a whole other video, but here's what's important to know. Universal purchased the rights to The Invisible Man from H.G. Wells for $10,000 in 1931. R.C. Sheriff would end up writing the script, James Whale signed on to direct, and Claude Rains was cast as our lead, Dr. Jack Griffin. It's nuts to think what The Invisible Man almost was. There were early drafts of the script with like invisible rats and invisible octopus, with Grand Central Station getting blown up. Like I said, it's a whole other video. But The Invisible Man we got, in many ways, feels more than just a monster movie. There, I would argue, are like a lot of elements that make it more real than the monster movies that came before it, which I think makes it scarier. And The Invisible Man is, if not the deadliest of the Universal monsters, like one of the deadliest Universal monsters, but I honestly think the deadliest Universal monster. And audiences were terrified of Dr. Griffin's descent into madness. Claude Rains had mixed feelings about being cast as the lead because on one side, he was a struggling actor, so getting a leading role, that was a big deal. But on the other side, he took his craft really seriously. He was, as Gloria Stewart called him, like an actor's actor. And I think it was really tough on him wanting so badly to perform, but literally being invisible for most of the movie. But James Whale knew what he was doing casting Claude Rains because he wasn't really in it for his looks. He wanted his voice. Claude's voice was so powerful and expressive so that even without being seen, he could come across as sinister or witty or even weirdly sympathetic. But, of course, Claude Rains was not the only star of The Invisible Man. And unfortunately for this video, no, I'm also not talking about Gloria Stewart, but you know I love her. I am talking about the special effects. They are what truly set this movie apart from all the rest. The Invisible Man was a technological marvel. I have so much respect for the practical effects in this film. 1933, you don't have digital tricks. You don't have CGI. You don't have green screens. You are using such creative outside of the box thinking here. Somebody had to figure out how to make someone literally disappear before our eyes, how to make things float, how to make all of these impossible things possible on screen while people watch. And that someone was John P. Fulton. John P. Fulton was the special effects maven responsible for most of the Invisible Man's tricks. And I'm going to tell you how he did all of them. And then in the comments, I want to hear from you guys, like which ones you figured out on your own and which ones were something of a surprise. And I'll start with the obvious, which is when things were supposed to float, they were often hanging from wires. And sometimes they would have a stagehand just off screen to do something like, say, close a door or push a chair if needed. One of my favorite early tricks is when he steals the bike and rides it away. And I didn't exactly know how they did it before, but once I know, I can kind of see it. So they use wires to hold the bike up, and then there's a hidden track in the ground that the bike moves across. Now, once you know that track is there, you can kind of see the line where it's going to go, but if you're not looking for it, it is pretty easy to miss. For The Invisible Man, the process was a lot more involved. So they had a completely black velvet set, black velvet floor, black velvet wall, and then poor Claude Rains had to sweat his face off in a completely black velvet outfit. Pants, jacket, gloves, head, feet, every inch of him covered in this black velvet. And then if he, say, was wearing clothes around, he would put those clothes on and it would look like they were floating. Or otherwise, for the big reveal scene, they wrapped him up in bandages and he would unwrap those. Dr. Griffin removing his bandages in the mirror, that was probably the most complicated shot that they got. They actually had to use 4 separate negatives for this, and then they painstakingly composited them together in this process that's called matte printing. So they got first the mirror and the wall, but the mirror was kind of blacked out or masked. Then they got a second shot that was the other side of the room that the mirror would have been reflecting. Then they got a third shot, which was the Invisible Man removing his bandages from behind. And then the fourth shot, which was removing the bandages from the front, what the mirror would have been reflecting. And then they composited all of that together. And for any imperfections, for anything that wasn't right, they had to hand retouch those. So I think 4,000 feet of film got retouched with just a brush and dye by hand by the team. It must have been tedious. When Claude was wearing the black suit, and particularly when he had other stuff on top of it, it was so hot and miserable and he could hardly see or hear at all. And I know this made rehearsals and filming so frustrating for literally everybody. They would have to run things over and over and over. And I know that Claude passed out more than once from heat or exhaustion. They used a completely different method for the very first unveiling, the one that happens at the inn with the cops and the villagers. For this one, Claude Rains' head was actually down below the collar of the shirt. And they had wires that made kind of a false head, and that's what he pulls the bandages off of. I will say for this one, I kind of caught on right away. I don't know if audiences at the time would have picked up on it so readily. I kind of think that we're just desensitized to so many of these special effects and tricks and whatnot. So I feel like when they're filming it from the back, right away, you can tell he's reaching so much further up than would naturally happen with your arms. But again, maybe audiences hadn't seen tricks like this before, so they might have just let it fly by without a second thought. And the award for most creative effect goes to the footprints in the snow. I think about this one a lot because it must have been such a conundrum trying to figure out how to make this happen. How do you make footprints in the snow invisibly where nobody is? So they got really creative and they decided to do the special effects from under the set. So they had a board, and the board had footprint shaped cutouts that were attached to pegs at the bottom, and then they covered the board with snow. And somebody underneath the set would pull the pegs down as he's supposed to be walking, which would lower the snow and look like footprints from above. I think it is so creative. I know that the special effects in this movie were time-consuming, frustrating, tedious, expensive. I think the budget ended up well over $300,000, and I'm sure that some people sometimes were saying, why did we do this? But when the movie came out on Halloween of 1933, I think it all proved worth it. The movie got really great reviews. It made a lot of money. And James Whale, R.C. Sheriff, the special effects, they all got really high praise. And I should also just give a quick mention to the legendary makeup artist Jack Pierce, who worked on this movie as well. The Invisible Man is clearly not as intricate as, say, The Mummy or Frankenstein, but this would have been a really easy opportunity to get lazy, to make a forgettable character. But he's made one that is really easily recognizable and memorable. He infused this stylishness and practicality into Jack Griffin. The Invisible Man isn't pure horror. It is also this sci-fi psychological thriller. It's ahead of its time. It blurs the lines between science and madness. Jack Griffin doesn't become invisible because of magic or some ancient curse. He uses chemistry, and the sacrifice is his sanity. And technically, it laid the groundwork for decades of effects-heavy filmmaking. Optical printing became a standard tool in the industry, used in movies like Star Wars and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. John P. Fulton would go on to work on huge movies. I don't even know where to begin from his IMDb. And he would win Academy Awards for visual effects for The Invisible Man Returns, The Invisible Woman, Invisible Agent, The Ten Commandments, and more. The Invisible Man is so much more than just a monster movie. It is a masterclass in visual effects and thinking outside of the box. It proved that horror movies could be smart, that sci-fi movies could be cinematic, and that special effects didn't have to just be used to dazzle, but could be used to scare. Don't forget that if you love these universal and classic horror deep dives, hit the subscribe, the like, the notification bell, share this video with all of your friends, and you should join with a paid membership because it's a great way to support my work, and you get bonus pictures, videos, and more. So go do that now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.